the podcast nowhere near Hollywood. It's Afternoon Coffee with Mike and Tim.
Hey, that was good. What I was thinking was maybe welcome to the Afternoon Coffee Podcast with Mike and Tim.
Nice try, boys, but this is how it should sound. This is the Afternoon Coffee Podcast with Mike and Tim.
Well, thank you, Heather. We have today a very special guest. She is the author of the award-winning comprehensive reference book, How to Write Heartfelt Letters for Treasure and Special Occasions and Occasions Made Special. It's kind of a mouthful of a book, but it sounds fascinating. She's also been seen on CBS News, Fox, NBC, and ABC, and she's a professional copy editor, and she has been for over 30 years. Lynette Smith, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Sitting here sipping my tea, not coffee. So sorry.
That's it. We're hanging up. That's it.
Say, Mike, if we had a budget, we could have our cups that I did have a lot of them made up and give it to our guests. So they would have an Afternoon Coffee Podcast coffee cup from Mike and Tim. We need
That's
to do
a great idea. That's a great idea. Once this starts taking off, and let's stay positive. Once it starts taking off, we'll have
we've got the famous Lynette Smith
back.
here.
We do.
Famous Lynette Smith. After her interview, things are going to really propel. We might get signed on by the big conglomerate. So, thank you, Lynette, for being here.
I would just take any of the alphabet soup that I just read off there. Any CBS News, Fox, NBC.
Oh man, that's tremendous. What an honor.
You wrote this book, and it sounds very specific, but I think it probably has a broader sense to it. And what inspired you to write this book?
Well, back in 2008, our son got married. And at the wedding rehearsal dinner, he and his bride-to-be each brought out a framed, heartfelt letter of appreciation to present to their respective parents. And it was so cool. They had their maid of honor and best man read the letters aloud while they stood by their own parents. And these letters were so neat. They talked about what it was like growing up in their family, what things they most admired about each of their own parents, and then they wrapped it up with a paragraph about what values they had learned that they were going to bring to their marriage. And then they expressed their gratitude for all that. And even now, and how many years later, 12 years later, my eyes are welling up and my hand went to my heart just talking about it. Yeah. And we have this framed in a place of honor in our home. And every time I read it, I get all drippy-eyed again. And my hand goes to my heart. And I'm just going, oh, this is so wonderful. And it's a gift that keeps on giving. It's not like a fast text. I mean, let's suppose you're grateful, right, to somebody, and you say, God, I'm so glad you did this for me. And they're happy to hear that. And a year from now, they think, well, she said something nice about me. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I felt good. Yeah. And that's that. Or you text it. It's just conversation. It's gone.
Well, especially every 2 years, you get a new phone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. True. And let's suppose you go semi-low tech to an email, right?
Yeah.
And you write an email letter and you send it and they receive it and they love it, but they forget to print it out. And the email gets buried deeper and deeper and deeper. Or someday the computer crashes and there was no backup for that email. It's gone. It's absolutely gone. So I'm in favor of something tangible that you can hold in your hand and that will last through time. And these heartfelt letters of appreciation are really cool. So that
really segues into why you think it's important, Lynn, to actually write the heartfelt letters of appreciation. And man, I didn't even think about this, Mike and Lynette, before the show, but I remember that my mother did this before she passed, and that she said, don't open it up until, after I'm gone. But she wrote each one of us. It was just for the sons because we lost our sister back in 2014, but Mom wrote a letter to each one of us and we laminated it and we kept it. So she wrote, she says, I'm in heaven now. And so she explained that, don't worry about me, I'm fine. And then she gave each one of us our attributes of what she noticed about us, our talents or whatever growing up, and how God used us and how he's going to use us. So it was almost like a letter from heaven that we opened up and read, and it's tangible, Lynette, and it's something we can
Yeah.
hold. So I see now where you're coming from.
Right. And do you not suppose you're going to save those letters and for your children, and
Yes,
they'll save them for their children and so on? And down the line, everybody who reads that letter is going to know what their ancestor was like.
absolutely.
You know,
That's
we were
legacy.
talking before about. Remember when I was telling you that when my mom died, we found all the letters that I had wrote her when I was in the service that she kept in her drawer, and that was from 1984, and she died in '05. So yeah, she hung on
Right.
to all that stuff, and you know, it's like because it meant something to her. It was heartfelt. It was, you know, I miss you. This is, you know, it was good stuff. I was 19 years old, away from home. I was writing letters. You know, it's like I miss your cooking so bad. You know, and you know,
Oh,
just
yeah.
and it wasn't even, you know, it
It
didn't
was
really seem like it ran
heartfelt
that.
for you at
Yeah,
your age.
it was real. Yeah, for sure.
It was real. And
Yeah.
the other day, I received an email from somebody who wrote a letter on how to preserve and archive things that are tangible, among them letters. And she was mentioning that she had found well, actually, her uncle gave her a stack of letters that her own grandfather, now deceased, had written to his fiancée for several months leading up to their marriage. They had had a correspondence going back and forth, her grandfather and grandmother, about the upcoming wedding and planning it and everything else, and just, of course, terms of endearment as well. And so she had this whole stack of letters from her grandfather, and these are just treasures, and people aren't writing them very much today. And so there's not a lot of tangible things to pass along to your descendants.
Well, when you see these kind of handwritten letters or something that is, they had to put some effort in, you almost get a glimpse into their own heart. You know, it's like when you see between the grandparents, it's like if you didn't know them all that well, if you didn't know them at all, you kind of like, you can get a feel after a little while of who they really were without having ever met them.
And that's the legacy. That's a legacy.
Yeah.
People are doing all this genealogy stuff, and it's all great to know what somebody's gravestone looks like and when they were born and when they died and how many kids they had and what genders they were and what their birth date and death dates were. But that's all surface stuff.
Yeah.
That's not about the people who really lived those lives.
Lynette, no doubt that you've done this. Have you put any sealed letters for your, for your kids or?
I've done things for people who are still living, and one of the things I've done is to write a letter to my husband when he retired, talking about, from the standpoint of being a great provider for the family and so on. And another one I wrote was just a general letter of appreciation to him, something I did to his father because that was the only remaining parent we had at the time. His father celebrated his 95th birthday, and I took a lot of these positive words that were in the appendix of my book. I'll talk a little more about that later. Picked the ones that applied to him, and I made a little one-sheet thing that would be frameable out of it. It said, Ben Smith, who says you're indescribable? And I wrote, able, accomplished, adept, adoring, all the way A to Z. Words in lots of multicolors, and it was just really fun to look at and fun to read, and especially for him to know what qualities we saw in him that we loved. And so that was another way to use to express the gratitude in writing without necessarily writing a formal letter. But there's that. I wrote one to my high school art teacher who was long since retired, moved down to San Diego to an assisted living facility. And I went to visit him one day, and I brought that letter with me, read it to him, and of course gave him a large envelope for storing it in. This was not a short letter. This was a long one because I reminisced and talked about the experiences we had all had in common. I'm remembering one. I was on the in the art club, and we were silk screening victory ribbons for the upcoming game, and we were cleaning the silk screens after running off the ribbons. And there was this big tray, and you had to use lacquer thinner, and they had a big fan above there and so forth. So we were cleaning off the silk screens, and the three of us were just laughing and giggling. And Mr. Little came out, and he says, "What are you guys laughing about?" He says, "Oh, no, you guys don't have the fan on." We were just high.
Oh, my. That's the best kind of high when it's inadvertent, right?
Oops.
Oh, my word.
So, yeah, that's probably the only time in my life I've been high. But it was an accident.
That's what I mean. It wasn't your fault.
So here's a
It's not my
question for you.
fault.
So, Lynette,
Famous
when
last
you
words,
write
it's not
a
my
letter,
fault.
no, it's
I'm
not
sorry?
your fault. When you write a letter, cursive, print, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, how do you write a letter? Is it in, or do you type it?
It matters who I'm writing to. But first of all, I tend to compose on the computer, print on the computer, but I make darn sure I hand sign the letter.
Good.
And I feel that's just fine. Now, cursive or printing, if you're handwriting it, depends on your reader. And it depends on what you know. I mean, if you're a young teenager who was never taught cursive writing, and some of those people are out there right now,
Oh, my
you
word.
can't write it in cursive. And it's going to be code anyway to the descendants. So you might as well print it, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, if you're going to print it, you might as well stick it on the computer. But that's another story. I mean, it can still be handwritten, but keep your reader in mind.
Yeah.
When I printed the note for my father-in-law, that was big print because he was very nearly blind. He couldn't see well. And that's an important thing. Not only big print, but space it out a little bit, make the line spacing a little wider. So make it easier on the reader, whoever your intended reader is. If it's going to be framed, it needs to be one page and so on.
And know your limitations. If you're not a good
true.
cursive writer, then maybe you should print it type thing.
True. Or if it's not legible, even
That's
with
what
the
I mean,
best
yeah.
of practice, forget about it. Just
Well,
print.
this is for another broadcast, but whoever dictated that we're not going to do cursive any longer? I mean, who's the one that sat behind the desk and said, in America, let's dumb down this for our kids, and who would ever do
probably
that?
somebody who had illegible handwriting and got reamed for it more than once in his or her lifetime. And I said, well, I'll fix that.
Well, my children know how to read and write cursive, and that's a good.
Yay.
My wife, she homeschooled, for all the kids growing up. And then we put them in private or public schools, but after that, but anyway, the initial was homeschool. But anyway, that's highly interesting. So print it and then definitely sign it. And when my children did artwork, and Dad, I'm an aspiring cartoonist. I do things like that's how I write my personal things, and I make personal cartoons for my children and friends and family. But I guess that's my little thing, like which you do. But anyway, but I tell the children, always sign and date your work. Always, all your artwork, sign and date it. So so you have it, and put the copyright, of course, on there.
And Tim does some neat things with that. It's like we've been out to breakfast a couple of times, and he sits there and he draws. He has this one character he does all the time, Emerson Elmendorf, and he draws the character and writes a little note to the waitress that comes by, and kind of like it was great service or whatever. And it's like, I think a lot of them will treasure that. I think a lot of them hang on to that stuff. I think it's just kind of neat because it's so weird.
Well, thank you, Mike.
That's neat. Did you ever watch Antiques Roadshow? They've brought out a thing like that once or twice. Here's a napkin with Picasso's, something Picasso drew on it, and then what do you think?
Well, I'm sure mine will be
too.
up there. Yeah, sure. Excellent. It'll go up there.
Why not?
Why
And
not?
by the way, there's nothing wrong with incorporating those cartoons and caricatures and whatever else in the letters.
Yeah. That's
make
a good
space
idea
for them.
And teach children. Are you teaching children to do this as well?
Not small children. I would say teens and on up.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with getting somebody started in the 4th grade, for the good old Mother's Day or Father's Day project or Thanksgiving, to say, let's stop and think about this and what goes in a letter that you're going to tell somebody you really like them, what you like about them. and why?
I got to tell you,
What kind of experience did it?
my daughter was done with school this year, and she took a bunch of papers and she wanted me to burn them in the backyard. So I said, let me save a few. She said, no, I want them all gone. So she went into the house and I hurry up and went through and I saved a bunch of her little work and I put it to the side, So that's Dad, I guess.
And well, that's a parental prerogative, right?
Got that right.
I've got a shoebox in my closet where it's like, the Father's Day cards, the homemade cards and stuff my son made me, at the direction of my wife and everything. And yeah, I've got all that stuff.
Good.
Yeah. I found one the other day from my nephew. It was a picture he had drawn of Snoopy when he was in elementary school that he did a pretty darn good job of. And I contacted him and I said, would you like to have that back? And he said, yeah. and yeah, that was something else. Anyway.
No, that's really cool. That's really cool. I don't think we're as thankful for the people in our lives, and I think that's where you were going with these letters, just to have people know, that they're appreciated and that their efforts have produced fruit. You know what I mean? And
right.
So if are there projects that you can do other than maybe writing a letter? Are there other things that you can do for certain holidays or something like that?
Sure. For example, Thanksgiving. All right. There is a project you can do amongst the family if you're having a large family gathering, where people would draw names maybe ahead of time. At random, they would get somebody else's name who was going to be there, and they can write just on a little index card, right? A little 3x5 card, things they like about that person, what they especially like about that person. And then you can put it in this bag, and it can be a decorated bag. If you've got little kids in the family, let them decorate it, and it's called a whole bag of thanks. And you put all those in the bag, that when people arrive, they put their, they just contribute, put it in the bag. And then everybody's sitting around the table, it's after dinner and maybe before dessert or during dessert. And we're going to start taking these little things out of the bag and handing them to the people who were written about. Actually, hand them to the people who wrote it and let them read aloud what they wrote, and then give that piece of paper to the person they wrote about. Sure. And that's something they can take home and treasure. And I think that would be a nice little thing to go ahead and sign and date, right? No
Absolutely.
Copyright on this.
Sign and date. Sign and copyright. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So
that's one. But there's another project at work, because people can be appreciative at work too. Suppose you've got a team, right? Whatever department, you've got a team. And the team has an administrative assistant who distributes to everybody in the team a piece of paper that's got every team member's name on it, and to the right of it, a blank line. And each person on that team will put one or two words that describe each of the other team members to their mind. Positive words only. This is all that's allowed. And then those are given back to the administrative assistant, who consolidates into one master list of positive words that describe each of those team members. And you know what a word cloud is? You might have seen those where they've got words sideways and all kind of into an artsy arrangement. Yeah. Well, there's a website, wordle.net, WORDLE.net, where you can go and create a word cloud. And so what you can do is put the person's name in that word cloud, and then the various words that describe them that their coworkers have put out there. And let's suppose that you see some special word that comes up like proficient, okay, and 2 or 3 people have said that word. Well, if in the box on Wordle you type that word 2 times, it's going to be a little bit bigger. If you type it 3 times, it's going to be bigger still.
I see.
So you type their name 3 times each, and then you go ahead and take the words, and some words are bigger than others, and you click a button, and a word cloud is created. And if you say, I don't like that arrangement, you click it again, and it'll rearrange it. And as soon as you get one you like, you print it out in color, right? And then those are the things that can be presented at a team meeting to the individuals. And the team members are going to love those The ones they get that belong to them, they're going to put them on their bulletin board, and it's going to become a topic of conversation as people pass by. And it's going to be making them feel good every day and probably try harder for the company and the team.
Wow.
Yeah. And because lately, I know in the last 20 years that I was working, that it just seems like the company itself, the management doesn't necessarily go around and kind of boost morale or anything like that. So I think having that within your own cellular team is fantastic, because it means a whole lot more when you're working side by side with somebody that you get a compliment or something, rather than. Yeah, because you wait for a compliment from management, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Wait a long time.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
maybe review time, but that's too long to wait. So I like to call this project "Turn Your Workplace into a Thank Tank."
Oh, I like that.
Oh, yeah. So for the person that they want to do this, they want to write a letter, what would be a great plan or a structure for them to, maybe a framework for them to look at in their brains to say, I don't know where to begin. What do I do?
Oh, this is so nice. I've actually put little bookmarks together. That's the shape. You don't have to use it as a bookmark. That's all focused on gratitude. And it says what to include in your heartfelt letter of appreciation. Number 1, a shared memory you both treasure. Remember I told you the one about cleaning the silk screens?
Yes.
That was a good opener for that letter. Number 2, the person's most admirable qualities, perhaps with examples. And again, in my book, How to Write Heartfelt Letters to Treasure for Special Occasions and Occasions Made Special, there's an appendix that includes 15 demographic lists of 72 words each. So you can go to one of those. And let's say you're writing to a young woman. So you go to the younger woman list and you look at those words and you say, well, this applies, this applies, this applies. Okay, I'm going to write about these 3 things. Those are the most important. So you've got ways to start you there. Number 3, the biggest part of this, the positive difference this person has made in your life or in the lives of others. Because I'm thinking, for example, what if you like your mayor? Okay, the mayor's making a positive difference. You write a letter to the mayor, or you can write a letter to your son, or to your sister, or your grandmother, or your great aunt. Number 4, express your gratitude to them. Simply a sentence. It can say thank you. Number 5, your handwritten signature. Don't forget to say love or always or whatever's appropriate above that. That's it. That's the letter. Very, very easy.
I'm writing all this down, so that's why I'm so quiet.
I'll send you a bookmark. As a matter of fact, I'd like to mention something. These bookmarks are my altruistic effort. I would like to suggest that anybody who will distribute 6 or more of these bookmarks to their group, their friends, or whatever, is invited to write to me. My contact information is at goodwaystowrite.com. Write to me and say, send me this many bookmarks, and I will. It's got not only those little 5 tips on it, it's got inspirational sayings about gratitude and reminding people why the letter will be saved and savored, because it's going to last longer than spoken words, email, or text. And as I said before, it'll be treasured anew every time it's read. So these bookmarks are useful tools to help people write their letters. So anybody who wants to do that can contact me and get hold of these.
Man, that's just there's so much value to that, because it's like I've talked to so many people over the years that it's like even with their spouse, one of the biggest complaints is like they don't feel appreciated. And it's like, and if they do have something like this, one little appreciative letter like this could go a long, long way.
Absolutely. I can tell you that for a fact.
Right. All this kind of came together in my head when you were talking. It's like, that just makes so much sense.
Sure. Something else, and you were talking about projects earlier that just came to me. There's a dad who has a website. I think it's called napkinnotes.com. Don't make me swear to it, but if you do Google Napkin Notes, you're going to find his website. What he did while his daughters were growing up, his special thing he did was he packed a lunch for his daughters. Bless you. He packed lunch for his daughters each day. And with the lunch, he would say some supportive statement on a napkin and tuck it in there, fully expecting that, she'd use the napkin, but she'd read it first.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that every day while she went off to school. And he found out years later that she had saved those napkins in one of her dresser drawers because they meant so much to her.
Wow.
So geez, a daily affirmation of gratitude or support or inspiration, something to help your child get through his or her day. What a cool way to do that. So that's another project.
We used to do Post-it notes once in a while. I would put them in with my son's lunch, or I put them on my wife's steering wheel when I was leaving for work because I left before she would. It was just something cool. Silly. Yeah. But
silly, but good. Good. Yeah. Well, I'd like to read a little something that I call it food for thoughtfulness. Studies show grateful people are more alert and happy and more helpful toward others. Expressing gratitude helps to bring meaning to others' lives. When people give or receive gratitude, their body's energy vibrates at a higher, more positive frequency. Ever notice how you feel better when you're around positive people? That's because you've picked up on their good vibrations, and you've started vibrating at a higher frequency too. Through this chain reaction, the world gradually becomes more positive. So be grateful and change the world. Based in fact, it really is. You've got high vibrations and low vibrations, frequencies, call them now. The higher ones are, love, gratitude, all those good things. Down low at the other end, you have things like fear, anger, and what you focus on expands. Don't focus on fear or anger, frustration. Focus on those higher things, the love, the gratitude. And you make your body better. You make the people around you better. You make people want to be around you. And I feel it just, it just multiplies.
So I would say this would be a great impact on marriage.
Yes, it absolutely would be. No question about it. Focus on gratitude. Try to find something each day to be grateful for regarding your spouse. Thank them for a good meal. Say, oh, thanks for making the bed. I appreciate that. Little strokes, here and there, keeps it going. It really does.
I got a text from my son, probably had to be about 4 months ago, and it was just a meme that he had found, and him and I have always been close. He turns 30 this year, and it's a picture of a taller man and a younger person, and the taller guy has a bunch of these his body is made up of these blocks, and there's a bunch of blocks missing on the taller guy, and on the smaller guy he's all complete except for one block, and the taller man is handing a block to the smaller man, and it says, "I have a hero, I call him Dad."
Oh
man.
And I've kept that, that means a lot when you get little stuff like that. I don't know. And it's kind of hard to describe the picture, but it's basically, it's like you give sacrificially with no regard to yourself. And I never really viewed myself like that, but he does.
Yeah. I feel that you can give and give. As a matter of fact, here's a little thing, just an aside. I'm a happy hugger person. Okay. I love to hug people. And that vibrational thing going on, I'm not a quick hug, I'm out of here. I hang on for a while. And I feel the vibration, that higher frequency build.
Yeah.
Because I'm sending love to this other person, and that person is sending love to me. And I feel that together our energy at one point kind of crescendos and says, there it is,
Yeah.
And I feel that we can take that energy, and it's really not a sacrifice because we can get any more anytime we want from the universe. But I feel we can take that combined energy, send it out there for the universe to use wherever it's needed. And my abbreviation for these, or my name for these hugs, is Biasi Hugs, initials that stand for blend it and send it.
Yeah, hugs are important, and you really can tell when somebody hugs you and they don't really mean it. They're just doing it for show or for whatever.
Exactly.
When you get a hug from somebody, yeah, right. Thankfully in Redneckville we don't do that.
Oh, good. Okay.
You either get a hug or you get the fingers. So, I mean, that's it.
One or the other.
I would
Talk
much rather have the honesty.
polarization.
But
Bless
you got to
their
appreciate
heart.
honesty. Yeah,
Bless their heart.
exactly.
I
Exactly.
learned what that was.
I knew about that.
All right, well, that does it for episode 1 of our interview with Lynette Smith, the author of How to Write Heartfelt Letters to Treasure for Special Occasions and Occasions Made Special. Her website is goodwaystowrite.com, and we will be back next week for the rest of this interview. Very fascinating stuff. And until next time, like Red used to say, good night and may God bless.
Guests on the Afternoon Coffee podcast stay at the Real Rest Inns and Suites, the only 2-star hotel in the tri-state area with a don't ask, don't tell policy for snakes and other exotic pets.
This episode has been made possible by our awesome intro voice, Heather Foster. You can find out more about her at heatherfostervoice.com. All music has been provided and produced by Marble Planet Productions. You can hear more about them on Instagram at Marble Planet Productions. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can either email us at afternooncoffeepodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at afternoonjava.